Hello, everyone. I wanted to talk about what does lupus feel like for me. Now, with lupus, there are a ton of symptoms, and all of us can feel a little bit different. So, what I wanted to talk about was not all of the general lupus symptoms, but what does it look like for me? What does lupus feel like for me personally? Now, when I first told everyone that I was diagnosed with lupus, after they asked, what is lupus? The next question is, what does lupus feel like? Now, with lupus, it's a silent chronic illness because you can't really tell on the outside that I have lupus. There's no signs on the outside that say, okay, this girl has lupus. So it's chronic, it's silent, and a lot of it just goes on the inside. So let me try to describe for you what lupus feels like for me. So in the beginning stages, just before I got diagnosed, a lupus flare for me felt like I was catching the flu. I had muscle aches and pains, and I had joint pain, and sometimes would run a low grade fever. And I pretty much thought I had the flu. But what happened is I started to feel like that every single night, night after night. And I thought, okay, when I wake up, I don't feel like I have the flu. At night, in the evenings, after I've done everything I need to do, flu-like symptoms would happen. I started walking like an old lady, like I was 80 years old because all of my joints would hurt. So for me, that's really how it started. Once that started to progress and get a little bit worse, I then began to develop rashes on my face. Now, there are lupus rashes that a lot of us will develop. For me, it's on my face. There's also a molar rash that can look, they call it, looks like a butterfly, that I started developing probably just about every afternoon. I would have a red rash on my face, or I would have the lupus rash. And I always felt like I had the flu. That's how it felt like in the beginning. As it progressed and I got worse, I started to feel like my body was completely running out of energy. For me, it feels like my body runs out of its fuel completely, and I just run on empty. And at that point, when I'm running on empty, the only thing I can do is breathe at that point. And that sounds really dramatic, but that's how it feels. It feels like breathing is all my body is capable of doing at that moment, or that's all the energy that I have. And those moments are pretty scary because it even feels laborious to breathe, which is a scary thought. So for me, that's what it feels like. Now, it's all on the inside. So when I feel bad, nobody really knows. You can't really see it or tell. It's just the symptoms that I feel on the inside. Something else that are part of my symptoms is I have hair loss. So what happens is, and I've talked about this in other videos, is during a lupus flare, I will begin to lose handfuls of hair. It doesn't come out in clumps, but it's a large amount, larger than what is typically normal considered shedding. That's normal for regular people. It's a lot more. And in fact, in a lot of my videos, I point out you can see my hair growing in at various stages. Like right now, all of the new growth is right up here in the front. And so I have all of these baby hairs that are sticking up because I tend to lose hair in different areas and different sections when I go through that part of lupus. So that's just all part of it. So what does it feel like for me? I have a skin rash on most days on my face. I will have joint pain. I have muscle pain. I also have muscle weakness with this. So for me, sometimes my muscles become so weak that it becomes difficult for me to walk. Or at the end of the day, it's difficult for me to walk up the stairs. A lot of times we have a particular clumsy looking walk with lupus, and it's because I'm out of energy, I'm out of fuel, and my muscles begin to not cooperate correctly. And sometimes I'll even develop a limp with mine. that looks very awkward and I become very clumsy. So for me, that's a lot of what lupus looks like, but also feels like. So when I'm having a lupus flare, I will not feel well on the inside at all. It feels very much like a very dramatic flu, but also absolutely no energy. And I don't mean the type of no energy where you slept bad and you're just kind of tired the next day. No, I mean no energy. Like changing the channel on the TV using a remote control is too much at that point. It's very hard to get this idea across that what it feels like when you have no energy left. It's not that I'm just being lazy or I can't do something. It's literally running out of energy and fuel within my body. And it's a very weird feeling. There is no forcing myself to keep going. There's none of that. There's nothing left at that point. So it feels like you're completely run down. It feels like you may have the flu. Things are aching and hurting. Hair is falling out. You can run a low-grade fever. I have done that a few times where I ran low-grade fevers and swore I had a virus, but it was just lupus. And so that's what it feels like. Also, something for me that I feel is when I'm having a lupus flare, I get out of breath easier and quicker. So for instance, walking up the stairs that I walk up every single day, all of a sudden I'm breathing heavier at that point when I wasn't breathing heavier the day before. So it becomes all very laborious. Something else that I feel with my particular lupus flares is that everything feels heavy. So for me, it's like walking on the beach in sand, and even trying to move your arms feels very laborious and heavy to me. So it feels like I'm trying to do normal tasks walking through sand, and I feel like everything's in slow motion for me and for my body. And like I said, so these are my particular symptoms of how lupus feels to me. What's confusing about this disease is that for all of us, it's a little bit different. So what I feel, you may not feel, and what somebody else has going on, I may not have going on. So it's all just a little bit different for all of us, but that's how I feel when I'm having a lupus flare. I talked about what it felt like in the very beginning to how it progressed. And so now when I have days of lupus flares, a lot of times I can't get out off of the couch. And I tailor my day to doing a heck of a lot less, because even doing something like creating a video becomes too much, because it just feels like you have no fuel left in the body. It's a very strange feeling, but there's almost nothing you can do for it except for rest. Resting is the only thing that I have found that can help me try to recover from it. And I never fully recover for like a day or two. It takes that long to get over it. So it's a lot like, I imagine what it feels like when a car runs out of gas and there's just nothing left to keep the body going. For me, that's what it feels like. Now, it is a very painful disease. There are days where all of my joints hurt, or maybe a particular joint hurts, and it is very painful. It also causes problems walking when we get clumsy, or when our joints hurt so bad, we can no longer walk properly. So that for me is what lupus feels like. And tell me what your story is in the comments. What does lupus feel like for you? Because like I said, it's different for every single one of us. See you guys in the next video.